Here's what's strange. Every month, new numbers come out. Every month, someone tells us inflation is under control, it's cooling down, everything's within normal range. And then you walk into a grocery store, and the same basket that cost one thing 3 years ago now costs something completely different. Someone here is lying, either the numbers or your own eyes. Today, we're figuring out why official inflation and the inflation you actually feel seem to live in two completely different countries. Quick refresher for anyone who needs it. Inflation is when there's more money floating around in the economy, but not more stuff to buy with it. Result, each individual dollar buys a little less. Picture this. You've got 10 cookies in a room and 10 people who want to buy them. Now you decide to print 10 more people, each holding money. Still only 10 cookies. Guess what happens to the price of a cookie? That's it. That's the whole concept. It's not some conspiracy, it's just math. The real question isn't what inflation is, it's why what we're shown and what we actually experience don't match up. Official inflation numbers are calculated using a giant basket of goods. That basket includes everything from electronics, which get cheaper every year thanks to technology, to rent, to used furniture, to 100 other things you barely think about. Here's the problem. You buy a new TV once every 5 years, but you pay for food, rent, and utilities constantly. When electronics get 20% cheaper and food gets 20% more expensive, the average comes out to roughly zero. The official number says everything's stable. Meanwhile, you're paying 1.5 times more in rent than you were 3 years ago. This isn't a trick, it's a method. The Consumer Price Index is an average. It was never designed to reflect your personal inflation. It reflects the average across an entire messy economy. But when officials go on TV and say inflation is under control using that average number, and people hear that as your life hasn't gotten more expensive, that's exactly where the disconnect begins. So why does everyone stay quiet about it? 3 reasons. First, admitting inflation means admitting failure. No central bank, no government wants to stand up and say, we printed too much money and now you're the one paying for it. That's political suicide. It's much easier to talk about temporary factors, supply chain disruptions, external shocks. Sounds like something that happened to the economy, not something the economy did to itself. Second, debt loves inflation. Here's something rarely explained clearly. If a government is carrying a massive debt, inflation actually works in its favor. It borrowed money when that money was worth a lot. It pays that money back later when it's worth a lot less. For heavily indebted governments, inflation is almost a gift. Quiet, invisible, but a gift nonetheless. So silence isn't always incompetence. Sometimes it's just convenient. Third, nobody wants slow bad news on prime time. A gradual price increase doesn't make headlines. A crash does, a collapse does. But inflation creeping along at 3 or 4% a month? That's boring. Nobody's running breaking news for that, which is exactly why it piles up for years, until people finally look around and think, wait, when did everything get this expensive? Here's the part that stings the most. Inflation isn't a universal tax. It hits people completely unevenly. If you own assets, real estate, stocks, a business, inflation is basically your friend. Asset prices tend to rise right along with inflation, sometimes faster. If your main source of income is a paycheck, you're on the losing side. Wages get adjusted slowly and reluctantly. Prices get adjusted instantly, no questions asked. Which is why talking about inflation isn't some abstract economics topic. It's really a conversation about who gets richer and who's just trying to survive while the economy is technically growing. So no, everyone isn't staying quiet about inflation because it doesn't matter. They're staying quiet because a truly honest conversation about it means admitting some uncomfortable things. That money was printed irresponsibly, that debt matters more than your wallet, and that the whole system tends to work better for people who already have something. The numbers aren't lying, but they're definitely not telling you the whole story.